I'm Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger. And you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
This podcast is made in collaboration with the Jewish Journal. Just a couple of weeks ago, we commemorated the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and the entire Western world mourned for the 6 million souls that perished. But what is often missed is the fact that the Nazis didn't only murder the people, they murdered whole parts of the Jewish culture that thrived in Europe for many centuries. They destroyed hundreds of newspapers and obliterated whole libraries. They murdered a language, Yiddish. And indeed, before World War II, Jewish culture in Europe was extremely vibrant, with an endless stream of theater, books, and newspapers. Literally hundreds of newspapers were published throughout Europe and America, in Yiddish, in Hebrew, and in the local languages. The people of the book were obviously obsessed with ink and paper, and it showed. Most of these publishings didn't make it through the war, but some survived. One of those was Új Kelet, a Hungarian-Romanian newspaper founded 100 years ago. The history of this paper is a long one, but the interesting part is how the paper nearly went bankrupt a few years back, right when Christoph Steiner entered the story. Christoph is a Hungarian part Jewish model and TV celebrity. He's been living in Israel for the past 10 years, and when he heard about the state of Új Kelet, he decided he simply couldn't let the paper die. What happened next is absolutely incredible. We're proud to have Christoph Steiner here on the podcast to tell the story. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, my God, what an intro. Thank you so much for having me.
Every time it fascinates them more.
Yeah, if I write it.
Yeah, because I think
Just
people
kidding.
always spend
Screw
their
it.
days with just working all the time, and we don't really stop and think to ourselves, what is this really what we're doing? What are we achieving? And suddenly somebody comes and tells you from like A to Z.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Sums it
sounds
up in a
pretty good.
nutshell.
You can take it to your resume, just copy paste and
Thank you. Send it over, please.
no copyright problems. So, Christoph, where can we start from? What are you doing here in Israel? How did you end up here? And how famous are you in Hungary?
Wow. The two questions are strongly connected to each other, I would say, because in Hungary I got to a point where I felt like I'm a bit becoming too much of a famous guy to handle the day-to-day life. And that was part of the reason why I decided to move to Israel. And I grew up in quite a unconventional family, I would say. My parents were Buddhists, although my father's mom was Jewish from Poland, from a tiny village. And my grandmother, my Jewish grandmother, ended up in Budapest through a long journey. She was a servant in a German family's home for many years, and then she escaped from there as well. And we never really got into the subject of what does it really mean that grandma was Jewish. And also my father was kind of a rebel, so he was much more interested in finding his own ways. And
But did you know from the age zero, that grandma was Jewish? Or was it a secret?
Not of the age zero. It wasn't really a secret. Like not in my generation. For my grandma, probably it was after she arrived to Hungary, because she never spoke about it. Not with her children. Not with my dad. Not with my aunt. But
Do you know why?
most probably because she felt that it's dangerous. She never
Traumatized, maybe a little.
yes,
Yeah.
like we don't know her whole complex story, but we do know that she was taken, and as far as we know, she escaped from getting on the train when everybody was taken, and then she ran away and she became a servant at this German family's home. She was there for many years, but my parents, my father was too young to ask all these questions when she was still alive, and we would have to go after it. I'm sure it's an incredible story, and I'm sure that I'll get to a place in my life one day when I really want to get deep into it.
So how did you become famous in
But in Hungary,
Hungary.
I became famous. Actually, it was just entertainment. It's so complicated nowadays to describe yourself. Like, what are you? You're an actor because you acted in a few movies. You're a writer because you wrote a few things. So I generally like to say that I'm kind of a storyteller. I like to tell stories in several different mediums. For me, it started with theater. I was a actor as a child, and I was dubbing, Hungarian dubbing. Can you imagine that?
like Disney movies?
Not exactly Disney, but yeah, it was mostly Japanese anime.
Okay, Pokemon?
Close, yeah.
Okay.
There was one which was called Full Metal Panic, and there was there was one which is called Inuyasha. It's very famous. I'm sure even in Israel there are many Inuyasha fans. It's kind of like a cult.
Yeah.
So after all the acting, I got into TV. I went to the audition of a TV show. They were looking for a presenter, and I got in when I was just 20, and my whole life changed. People started to recognize me on the street. I had a live TV show for many years, and while I was already doing the show, I started to write for different newspapers and magazines, mostly in the beginning interviews. And then, like, the whole thing, just one thing got to the other. The writing became a bit more important for me. The TV started to be a little bit too much. Like, it's really, I don't know exactly how is it here in Israel, but I'm guessing that it's the same, that once you're a part of a gigantic production, you can't really express yourself the way you want. As much as you are trying to represent yourself on each and every platform, still the shows are going to be edited in a way it's good for the production. So
You're a puppet.
yeah,
In a
pretty much
sense.
so. And I understood that what can happen to you if you're a TV guy. Like, the best thing that can happen to you is that you're gonna have some kind of a morning TV show. So you have to get up at 3 in the morning every day and like have 2-minute long conversations with people, what happened the day before in Big Brother and all these things, or you're becoming like an X Factor or like something like this. Like
Sounds like a
host.
nightmare.
And yeah, it's like, I'm sure it's fun, like, to do a season of X Factor. Yeah, you can check it in your CV, but like, and then the next show comes and the next show, and I knew that this is so not for me. So I was always dreaming about being by the sea.
I feel like
being
it's
very
hard
free.
to probably get out of that loop because
Yeah.
you get probably sucked in. Like, I mean, any loop, any job, you kind of get sucked in, but especially that because it's like the good life. So you get sucked in. You're on TV. You mingling with other celebrity. It's like hard to break out of that.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's mostly not easy because it's really going against your comfort zone. Like, up until now, when I go back to Hungary, everything is cushioned around me. I have my taxis to take me. I go from one show to another, one interview to another, one job to another, and I could live my life like that. I just feel extremely important every single day, every single hour, but I really don't want to. I really had enough of it, and already 10 years ago I understood that I had enough of it, and I really love it when I go back to it. It's not like I'm spitting on the face of the mirror image who I was 15 or 20 years ago. I do have the same desire in me to be recognized, that my job will be appreciated, but I don't want the constant attention to ruin my creative process.
So you ran away here,
Yeah, kind of.
basically.
Yes.
Was it like one day you packed everything, booked the first flight, and just found yourself in 40 degrees heat in August in Tel Aviv?
He asked himself, "What country do people run away to?"
From what country people run away from? I'll go there.
Yeah.
It's kind of true what you're saying, actually. Like, I always had a very high social sensitivity, and whoever was bullied, I always felt like I'm gonna go to that side, and sometimes I felt like maybe it was also from a matter of like provocation, that I really I want people who bully others to like try to have a different understanding, and for me to be able to present a different understanding, I have to be close to that person who, or that nation, or that ideology which is being bullied, and I need to get to know it better. So that was really interesting for me, like what's happening with this Israel thing, like, you know, like why is it that if I ask in Budapest, if at a party I ask somebody like, what's your name? And she said some Jewish name, and I said, like, so you're Jewish? And she looked at me like, oh my God, like I asked the most insensitive question, and I felt like,
Really?
yeah,
Because she's like, he's probably a neo-Nazi and he's going to throw me to the river.
I'm sure that it's not that extreme by now, but like back then, this was in the MySpace era. I don't know how old are you guys. I'm 37. So
Yeah, I remember that
I had a
era.
MySpace for like 5 minutes.
yeah, well, I was really starting. Like I just thought about this today. That, like, you know, being an influencer started off on MySpace for the
Right.
people, I think.
And yeah.
So anyway,
So back then, it was felt.
it was like really like
Do you think she was she was scared because she was actually Jewish, or she was offended that you were calling her Jewish, or you don't know?
I think a combination of all these things. I think like in Hungary now it's quite different, because the Hungarian Jewish community is really doing a lot of work to make a change, and there are Jewish cultural events, and I really think that it's becoming better.
People don't know it's the third biggest Jewish community in Europe.
Yes, and the most beautiful, huge synagogue in the middle of the city center. It's
Right.
the Dohány Street Synagogue. It's amazing. So yeah, there are wonderful things. I'm going quite often to collaborate with the Jewish summer festivals where I'm cooking, and it's amazing. But back to traveling here. So I was really interested also because of the whole concept of the Middle East. Like everybody back then already started to speak about, you know, that all the future tellings of Nostradamus are becoming true, and all the world is going to become like Muslimized. And like I was like, as a child, I remember even when I was 10 years old, I was reading these Nostradamus books. And my father was meanwhile telling me stories as a bedtime story from Josephus Flavius, his book The Jewish War, and I was listening to stories about the Masada, and like I just knew that I have to come here. I didn't want to live in a world where the news is about, I don't know which kind of puppy won the dog exhibition this month. I wanted to be there where the things are really actually happening.
Wow. And what did your
So-
parents say about that?
My dad is a very adventurous guy. He back then, when the communism was full blown in Hungary, he got a fake passport, and he went to Amsterdam. He lived there for a little while. He really didn't stop me from anything ever. If anything, I think he's proud of it, that although by now, at the age of 65, he's a bit more relaxed. But he's very happy that somebody is continuing all this going and
Adrenaline
going
junkie
crazy.
tradition.
And my mom, unfortunately, she died
Oh.
a while ago, about a decade and a half ago, and I also think that she would be very happy for me. My father used to tell me that just before they met, my mom had a dream that she's gonna leave Hungary and travel to Italy and just like be a gypsy and just go and see what happens in Italy. So
But a
I can
decade and a
relate.
half ago, that's kind of right around when you moved here. Do you think
Yeah.
it played a role also, the fact that the passing of your mother?
yes, definitely, of course. I always say that sad and horrible and tragic it is to lose a parent. In the same time, all of us suddenly arrive to a wider gate. We just have more possibilities, because I'm not sure that I would leave my mom behind if it was
Yeah.
You
up
have
to
less
me.
to
We were-
lose.
we were too close for that. And with my dad, we are very, very close, but it's a different kind of relationship. We are very good friends. He's coming very often, and it's just like when my mom died, I had this thought, okay, like what's holding me really back? It's my job, which I think I can. I'm not even saying I quit the TV, because I didn't quit it. I just wasn't actively presenting shows like all the time. I'm taking projects which are interesting for me. And after my mom died, I felt like, okay, I'm ready to take this step. And then the classic story of meeting an Israeli guy came into the picture, and he was a medical student in Hungary. We fell in love. We were together already while I still lived in Hungary, and eventually he finished the medical school, and he was quite open-minded about if he should stay in Hungary, we should move somewhere else. But by then we were in Tel Aviv quite a few times for a holiday, and I got a taste of it, and I didn't want to let it go, and I said, no, we're moving to Tel Aviv.
But, you know, usually in the classic story, the other end of the picture is a girl.
Yeah.
Did you know, like back then was Tel Aviv still kind of the gay-friendly city that it is today?
Yes, it was very gay-friendly. It was already very well known from being extremely open-minded, but still.
But Grindr wasn't invented 10 years ago.
Yes, it's true. It came a few years later.
But was it like? Were you aware of the wider perspective in it? Like in your mind, was Tel Aviv Israel, or did you understand that you're coming to like a culture that's not as it's not all Tel Aviv?
Yes, I was very curious about the whole, like, everybody used to tell me that Tel Aviv is this bubble. You know, I obviously saw the famous movie. I saw all the even back then the Tel Aviv Pride was really huge, and I saw all these video clips of it, and I felt like I really want to be a part of something that is not like in Budapest. The gay pride is up until now, every single year there needs to be a decision if it's going to be fenced. It's like the people can't cross
but in
the
Jerusalem,
fences.
it's the same.
Yeah.
So when I arrived here, I realized that this is like a place which is also, as a gay person, gives me a lot of freedom, but also I think what really is making Tel Aviv turning it into this bubble is that it's not just about being gay. Really, it's like you can just really be whoever you want to be. I know it sounds like a cliche, but really, like the most religious Jewish people, or like Muslims wearing a burqa, or gay guys wearing tank tops, or bikini wearing girls, like really nothing is strange or out of place in this city. And that is why I really felt like I want to come here, and I want to be a part of this. And back to what I said earlier about the Nostradamus future tellings, like it was also very interesting for me to become a part of the Middle East. And as much as I appreciate the fact that I live in Israel, and Israel is my nest and my base here in the Middle East, I try to travel as much as I can, and I cross to Jordan, and I cross to Palestine, and I travel to places where most people don't travel to.
The spirit of your father.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say.
Exactly. I recently went for a trip from Bethlehem to Ramallah and to Nablus.
Oh my God.
And really, it's I have to say that I didn't meet one person who got even upset with me that I live in Tel Aviv. If somebody asked me where am I from, I said I live in Tel Aviv. They said, wow. And if something, they said, like, I wish we could go. I wish you guys, the Israelis, could come. So really, it gave me, moving to Israel really gave me a complete understanding of the bubble is not really exactly Tel Aviv. It's this whole region which is like on fire in every possible way. It's bursting with creativity and with like incredible inventive minds, and with like this spiritual like explosion from all the different religions, and even within religions all the different explanation of the religion. And meanwhile people are just living for the day. That's the best of it, I think.
Wow.
So, we can't talk about all the adventures you had in these 10 years, but I want to focus on two subjects. First of all, eventually you broke up with that love,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Yeah, the relationship ended, and I had to make a decision to myself if I'm going to go back to Hungary, which wasn't really an option, or just pick another country and go for a new adventure, or I could do I studied Kabbalah for many years. When I moved here, I was very, very curious about the spiritual understanding of the Judaism. And in Kabbalah, they say that we all have a tikkun, a correction which we have to make. And I felt like maybe it's a very important part of my tikkun that I won't make Israel all about a failed relationship. I wanted to stay connected to this place the way I was excited when I arrived here. And I decided that no matter what, I'm going to make it here. So I had no money at all. I rented a sailing boat, a 10-meter long sailing boat in Jaffa port. That was my home until I gathered enough to
Do you pay
establish
city
a life.
taxes? for that?
Sorry?
Do you pay city tax when you're on the boat?
Well, I actually don't know. Probably the company who I rented it from, probably they do.
Okay.
I always got an invoice. So, but it's incredible, really. There are just people who have their boats there, and especially in the winter time, they won't take it out. So the boats are just standing, and it was exactly the time when Új Kelet, the newspaper, came into the picture.
Uh-huh.
So I already started to be interested about this project while my relationship with my ex was still on. But after we separated, I really felt like it's a strong kick for me that, okay, I'm going to establish here something that is going to give me like a permanent connection to this place that nobody can take away from me.
How did a gay, part Jewish Hungarian TV celebrity get interested in a Yiddish 100-year-old paper?
It's Hungarian.
I don't understand. In a Hungarian, but it's in Yiddish,
Yeah,
right?
but it was partially in
Ah,
Yiddish
okay.
at some time. Like really, it changed so much throughout. It's 100 years, really. So it sometimes when we look at the old copies of the newspaper, we can't really figure out what language is this because they are mixing up the Hebrew and the Yiddish and the Hungarian. Like in recipes, for example, they write like take the hatzil and like so.
They weren't worried that they knew that their readers were understanding them.
Yeah, like, you know, the newspaper, that's the most incredible thing about it, that it has all the evolution of the Hungarian Jewish like society or community like squeezed into this 100 years of every single edition of the newspaper.
How often? It was a weekly?
When it was first published, it was daily even.
Oh, wow.
When it was first published in Israel. So first it was founded 100 years ago in Kolozsvár, Cluj, which is in Romania, in Transylvania. And although it's a part of Romania, truth to be told, most of the people, especially back then, were Hungarian speakers. It's a little bit like one of those many situations like many countries have that it doesn't matter that they all speak Hungarian. On paper, they are Romanians.
Yeah.
And so they started to publish this kind of like Zionist Hungarian language newspaper. And then after the foundation
What
of
does
Israel,
the name mean?
Új Kelet, it means New East. New East, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So
yeah, so sorry, you were saying in Israel?
yeah, so in Israel they were just turning it into a daily paper, and it was running very well because as weird it sounds, back then there were so many Hungarian-speaking people in Israel.
When?
Like in the end of the 40s, beginning of the 50s. It's because we know how many people were fleeing from Budapest when the Second World War started, and also not just from Hungary, but also the Hungarian-speaking people from Romania and from other territories around Hungary. Many of them came to Israel. So up until now, whenever I'm telling to somebody that I'm Hungarian, really, I'm not even exaggerating. Every third person is telling me, "Oh, my grandmother, my grandfather was Hungarian, my aunt was Hungarian."
It's a big culture here.
Yeah.
But how did you come to know about this paper, and then why was it like what happened in your head where you were like, I'm gonna revive this thing?
Everybody knew about the paper, really. Like people who are Hungarian and have a connection to Judaism, or travel to Israel, and they've been here for a little while, and they get to know the Hungarian-speaking community here. They would know about the paper, really,
Okay.
because it has a reputation. And even throughout those years when it wasn't exactly going well, people knew about it, and they were contributing in it. People were just like sending. There was a stage of it when it was really almost like a college paper. Like some of our editors are telling us, who used to work for the paper back then, that the chief editor. It was like the new era when the internet appeared, and he was just like copy pasting the news, and that's what was printed. And like eventually it had to come to a place where somebody had to come into the picture who asks a question like, who are we making this paper for, I think. And there wasn't anything wrong with the people who used to do it. The only question is like, when we try to take care of something that has such a huge reputation, how do we revive it in a way that it can keep something from the identity what it has, and people are used to it, and that's why people love it, and to turn it into something completely new, that people who do Aliyah, for example, from Hungary, they would want to buy the newspaper because they know there is something in it for them. People who are considering moving to Israel or coming to Israel and they live in Hungary, they would want to order it to Hungary because they would know that there is so much information in it. And that was my goal. That's how I met the owner of back then owner of the paper. He was a very nice, originally Moroccan Israeli guy who had no connection to Hungary. Really, for him it was a business. He owned a few newspapers, which some of them were Romanian, some of them I think Russian, and inside this package
sounds like someone in the mob.
It sounds like an awful business venture.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, it wasn't going well for him. That's
money
why
laundering business, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I think he really he tried that. At first, he thought that it's all going to probably go on all these newspapers, but really, people didn't buy the Új Kelet, and at one point, he said he's not doing it anymore.
So he was like,
And
I'm
when
gonna close it.
Yeah, he was about to close the whole thing, and then my Hebrew was even worse back then than now, and I approached him. I asked for the details of him from the back then editor-in-chief, Sylvia. She was very nice. She also wanted the paper to go on. And I met George, the owner, and it was like, you can imagine how without Hebrew, like any Hebrew, I can propose that I would want to continue the newspaper. It was about an hour and a half meeting. We were drawing. We were doing like, you know.
He doesn't speak English, and you don't speak Hebrew.
No, it doesn't speak
And you
English.
don't speak Moroccan either.
I think he spoke some French. We were actually speaking like a combination of French, Hebrew, English. Sometimes I try to sneak in some Hungarian. Who knew? Maybe he learned a little from the newspaper.
So you guys were speaking Hungarian, English, French about a Romanian, Hungarian, Yiddish newspaper.
Yeah, it really
in
was like
Israel.
a charade.
Yeah.
But he gave me the chance, and my proposal. I hope he got it, but whatever. By now we are here, so everything worked out well. But I proposed that I would continue it without receiving any money and asking any money from him. I just want a complete change of design, and
Full autonomy.
yes, exactly. And I also wanted, of course, to keep many of the old writers, because we have writers who are writing for us for 40 years. So I couldn't imagine saying like, okay, from now on we are like hip and cool, and these people don't have a place. Obviously, we kept them, and in the same time, what was extremely important for me, I gathered around me an editorial team. And I knew that because I'm doing so many things, we didn't speak about this, but it's as weird it sounds after speaking about all this such a long time, that my main thing is the vegan chef thing, and I have a very busy business around this, apart from all the writing and TV and everything. And I knew that I need a team around me who can manage the newspaper without me being all the time 100% present. So I found Eva Vadas, who became the chief editor, and I found Shara Shalamon, who is my trusted photographer, and I work with her on my food photography, and she became as well the art director of the paper. And we have lots of editors. We have Anna and Istvan, and we have an incredible graphic designer, Yuli, who is like, all these people, some of the people are in different countries, and our editorial is happening on Messenger, on Facebook Messenger.
But your goal was to make it a young, cool, hipster newspaper?
Not really to make it only young and cool. I wanted it to be a little bit more hipstery, I can say that, because just because I felt like we cannot go glam, like, you know, it can be our direction. I didn't try to like speak to the non-existing like rich Hungarian community living on Sarona or something like this. I wanted it to be like down to earth but still cool. And yes, our first issue, what we published as the new ownership, it was actually about Zionism. Every single issue we put out, there is a separate topic for it.
Cool.
So
wait, I have to ask one more little question, because
Yeah.
in the Haaretz article, it said that you bought the newspaper.
Yes.
And what you're described now is a deal without actual buying the newspaper.
Yes.
So I'm confused.
Yes, because we had... I can't describe it other than a miracle. After a few months of running the paper, we had about every month we had a meeting with George, the owner, and one time we had our monthly meeting and we sat down with him, and before we would even open our mouth, he said, "I really love what you did to the paper. I don't feel like handling this project anymore. I think it's safe with you guys," and we made a very, very, very fair and very like heartwarming deal with him.
Is it secret, the number?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't say it not because it's so much or so little or whatever, just because I don't feel like I have the authority
Fair enough.
to give it out. But this is how we became the owners with Shara, with my friend and photographer. And eventually we brought in Eva in the picture, who is the chief editor now. And we are like an incredible, really, triangle, because like as much as I am the person who did this, without them, this would never, ever, ever happen. Like Shara is the visual mind behind all of this, and Eva is incredibly well connected with all these Jewish communities. And one of the things what the Haaretz article also mentioned about us, that we got a fund, a support from the Hungarian government, which might sound even surprising because
Today they say how anti-Semitic it is, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. So yeah,
yeah, but in the same time, you know, this is we got not just the support, but also we get constant attention from the embassy here, and we have a really good relationship with them. And I really believe in it, that it's because we are not trying to be like a mouthpiece of anyone. It's very important. Like, it's not a secret that we got a fund from the government, but I really don't like it when people think that if any government is supporting a publication, that means that the publication is compromised. Not necessarily at all. For us, every single political topic is raised up in a way that somebody is writing from a really sort of nationalist point of view and really sort of conservative approach. And then on the same page or on the other page right next to it, we have somebody who is coming from on the same subject, but from and I wouldn't even say the word leftist, because I don't even know anymore what these things mean. Like, it's so confusing, really.
From the opposite point of view. Is it a continuous fund, or is it like a one-time grant that the government gave?
It's a one-time grant.
So I think that's less problematic. I think the main concern is when a government is continuously funding something. Then you're worried that, okay, people are going to write things in a certain way because they're worried of that fund getting cut. If they give you the money, now you can write whatever you want. It's like they can't take it back.
Well, first of all, I have to say that unfortunately it's not that much that we would have to like say, oh my God, if we are not getting it next year. The truth is, everybody are volunteers. We are all volunteers. Nobody.
It's not really a business anymore.
No, it's not a business. We are extremely happy and proud of it that we sell enough of the newspaper that we don't have to pay for the printing. We always have enough money, and we always have to, of course, pay for the layout design. So we do have expenses all the time, but we are not.
But everybody's working as on a volunteer basis.
Of course, and we don't have an office, and we don't have special phones and laptops for our jobs and all these.
In Tel Aviv, you don't need an office. You have cafes.
Exactly. Nowhere in the world, actually, I think anymore we need
an office.
Offices.
So, is there a online version? Is there a website?
Yes, we do have a website. It's újkelet.com. And it's not as complex yet as we want it to be. We wanted to have an online presence, so we made it happen, and we do upload some articles, but there is a Hungarian language page which is really popular. It's called Israel Info, and it's in Hungarian, and it's every day it's being updated. They have incredible writers and editors, and we are very closely working together with them. I can say that they are our media partners basically on the internet. And so they have an Új Kelet column, and we upload the articles there as well.
So we don't have much time left, but what happened? Let's finish your love story. What happened in your life?
The romantic
aspect.
Well, after living on the boat for a while and being single, happily single, and really I was thinking that, okay, like I really didn't plan to have a relationship. I went on a few dates like singles do, and eventually I found myself on a date which was a million times more interesting than the ones before, and that was Nimi, my husband. Since then we got married. And
how did you meet?
We met. It's a very romantic story. We met on Grindr.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Grindr, for those who don't know, it's like Tinder
exactly.
for gay people.
Yeah, and I wasn't on Grindr to look for love.
Nobody is.
Yeah, most of the people are not. But it really shows how things can happen, how unexpectedly things can happen. I was working with the TLV Fest, which is the gay and lesbian LGBTQ festival of the city. And I was at the screening, and because it was not my usual neighborhood, so I checked who are the guys online, because I live in Yafo, so when I'm in the city, I was curious, like, okay, what's in here? And Nimi found me, Nimrod Dagan. He's, by the way, actor of Habima Theater, very talented one. And he wrote me, and I saw his picture, and I immediately, without even thinking, I wrote, wow, you're so adorable. And then I was like,
You
wow,
should play
that's-
hard to get, man.
I know, like that's so not a grinder conversation.
Yeah.
Like usually on grinder, people are like, "Hey, what are you into? Like looking for now?" Like that's the conversation.
Let's meet in an hour.
Yeah, sort of. But instead of meeting in an hour, we talked through the whole night, and then the next day we've met, and ever since then we are together.
But
That's
then
amazing.
2.5
something.
years.
There was a crisis, not in the relationship, but with your relationship with the state.
Yeah. It's true.
When was it? Like a year, 2 years ago, something
Well,
like that.
I did have a few, to be honest.
Okay.
Like I had it's really it's very difficult for me to speak about it because I love to live here, and I appreciate so many things that Israel did for me and for the person who it shaped me into. But in the same time, I can get so upset over the bureaucratic issues, like because of my ex relationship ending and because of Nimi and I, we didn't file for immediate like partnership visa when we've met, because it's like not the way relationships work, obviously.
Yeah.
So I suddenly one day found out that my ID card is going to be taken away from me, and my health insurance was discontinued. And
Although your grandparents are Jewish, and according to the law, in theory, you should have been citizen.
well, that's true.
Citizen.
That's true. But to be fair, I would have to go after this and like really provide all the papers that are requested and everything. But since I had my working visa, I have a company here. I work here for many years. It was still very, very shocking for me that when they took my Todat Zeut and basically
after how long was it? Why you were here
I think it was maybe after about 5 years or
and
6
your working
years.
visa was up, or was
I
it-
had to request a new working. First of all, they told me that there is a big chance that we are going to have 2 weeks to. I am going to have 2 weeks to leave the country.
Wow.
And by then I was already together with Nimi. So actually, he was the one who wrote a Facebook post about it.
Which
And
went viral.
It completely went viral, and all the newspapers and
What did
all
he
the.
say in the post?
He said that it's very frustrating that somebody who is here in this country for. I'm just saying it because it's Nimi's words. If it was me, it would sound weird. But he wrote that somebody who is writing so much about this country as like the most accepting and welcoming place in the world, and like really I'm writing for Time Out for 7 years. Now I'm writing for EasyJet, the in-flight magazine, and everywhere I'm
You're a
writing
star in
about.
Budapest, and you talk there
Yeah,
about us, and
Yeah, like I
represent
meet
us there.
Hungarians all the time who tell me like, oh, we went through all your tips about where to go in Tel Aviv, and obviously the things don't connect. Like it doesn't matter that the Ministry of Tourism is inviting me for trips, and they take me to the Knesset and all these things. Another ministry is finding something else, and they don't connect the dots, and you're just like a file and you're out. And he wrote all this, and he also wrote that he's thinking of quitting the theater, and if I have to leave, so he will leave as well. And lots of newspapers and TV stations called us, and eventually we got support from a group of lawyers. They found our case very challenging
Pro
and
bono.
exciting. We made a good deal with them.
yeah.
And they gave us like really the best treatment I can
Wow.
imagine. And it was just like understanding that it's so bad to say it, but like I don't want other people to go through this, and not everybody has the possibility to like really. I can put my frustration on Instagram and then my followers react on it, and it generates something. But there are people who don't have these possibilities, and it's up until now it's still sad for me to think about it. And although I have my working visa, which I'm really grateful for, and I'm happily taking all my taxes, paying all my taxes, and it's really like just every single year we go to the immigration office, we have this interview, and once again I would have to be 7 years from the moment we register together as a couple until it would even like come up as a option for me to become a citizen.
But if you were a woman marrying
Yeah.
Mimi, and you were like in whatever Ukrainian or Hungarian woman, and she would marry him, she would need to wait for 7 years as well.
No, obviously no.
What's the procedure in that case?
Then immediately
She gets citizenship
there
because
is
she
a
married an Israeli.
paperwork, but yeah, of course.
So basically, if you're not
Same
a
sex.
if
Same-sex marriages, you wait 7 years.
Yeah,
are you registered as married?
it's not really marriage in
Yeah,
Israel.
doing
There is no marriage for not even for civil marriage. There is like the religious marriage. We are basically in a registered partnership. But if we would fly to a country where people who are not citizens of that specific country and gay can get married, which are not very common. Like even the most accepting countries where people can get married, like gay people can get married, still one of the people have to be local. And so if we would fly to Las Vegas and we would get married there and we would come back, it could shorten the time, but it would cut in the half-hour process right now. And nobody can say that it's better to wait out the process what we have now, or to go and get married and then start that process all
That is
over
so
again.
fucked up.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm saying really like I love living here and I do consider myself like a part of this society, but I'm not even waiting for it anymore to become a citizen. I really think that I'm a citizen of the world and I happen to be here now, and it's sort of a...
So I just want to understand when you these 7 years, basically the rights of being in a partnership, meaning all the benefits and things, that kicks in after 7 years. That's the difference.
Yes,
I see.
I'm not like I'm paying higher insurance, I'm paying higher taxes, and
Yeah.
and I exist basically only through my partner's Taudat Zehut ID number, and I don't.
It's ridiculous.
Yes,
It's ridiculous.
I know, but I think that I just really want to close this subject in a positive note, that I know that things don't happen from one day to another, and the same way as Tel Aviv wasn't always the most gay friendly city, and the same way as people in Europe at first, like maybe they have difficulty to cope with it, that new cultures are entering into their countries, and the same way as like we just moved to a new neighborhood and it's weird at first, like things need adjustment. And I believe in it that if we stand together and we challenge the system, not in a way which is like a violent, aggressive way, but because of the demand, so what is offered is going to change, and
Now we're
gonna have an easier time.
recently seeing the first kind of openly gay Knesset members. So that
Yeah.
hopefully will change
Yeah.
things.
From the
Exactly.
right wing part and from the left wing part.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully the people who are in any of the parties are going to go for voting when there are questions about gay rights, because it happened before that there were serious questions put on the table,
Yeah.
voting in the Knesset, and people from the right wing who were openly gay just didn't go voting because it would be uncomfortable for them to vote with no for their own community. And it's true that it's a very, very gay-friendly society in the everyday matter, but regarding the rights and the laws, there is a long, long way to go. Children cannot be adopted by gay couples that both of them are legally parents. surrogacy is basically as much as it's a miracle that it's even a possibility, and I truly appreciate it, but still it's a really big business right now, because it's $150,000 to
And
have a
morally
child in the
uncomfortable
States.
sometimes.
Well,
That's a whole subject, but to some people, it's
there
debatable.
there are ways when it's definitely questionable, especially when the woman is not taking part in it in a way that she's truly appreciated. But in the States, really the system is working in a way, that's why it costs so much money, because really everybody is getting a very fine share from it, and everything is screened like a million ways. But still, for me and for us with Nimi personally, we would love to adopt. We think that there are too many children without parents, and especially here in the Middle East, like really all we hear in the news is how overpopulated the world is becoming, and how people are just trying to go anywhere to find a better life. And it's really for me, it would mean that the world is starting to become a better place if people would understand how important it is that adoption would be open for LGBTQ people.
I think the problem is that the society here is still, meaning the government can change all it wants, and Tel Aviv can be as open, but you have
Conservative people.
at home people who, no, it's not just conservative people. I think it just all across the country, people aren't really open to the idea of same-sex relationships.
Well, they need to try, and then they can give an opinion about it.
They should definitely meet people who are in same-sex relationship, because really I see it so many times. Nimi and I are, I think, very, very open about who we are. It doesn't mean that we are going around like waving a rainbow flag wherever we want. We obviously like try to be sensitive, but if anybody sees us together and in a first conversation after 1 minute somebody asks us who you are to each other, we always say that we are together, no matter if it's in Istanbul, or if it's in Hungary, or if it's in Poland. It could be anywhere. We are going to be ourselves, because really that is the only way for these conservative people who we spoke, or closed-minded people. I wouldn't even say conservative, because people can be conservative and open-minded in the same time. But people need to see us, have a conversation with us, understand that we are, same people working for making a living, having dreams, wanting to be in love. And then they would say, the first sentence is always like, I don't like gays, but I had this conversation with this guy and he seems nice. And that's like with everything, this is how I that's a huge step. And if people
not like
can
Hungarians, but
not to be pessimistic, but that's not enough for some people, unfortunately.
yeah.
Some people it's like unbreakable, and I've seen it. We'll talk a bit about it after, but it's just sad how it, even in the face of meeting
But there's hope. There's hope. In 50 years' time, it will be completely different. I think.
I agree.
It's just a matter of shedding I don't want to say awful things like that, but anyway.
The old people gonna die, and then
there was I think it was a politician or something that said that in America. It was an awful quote, so I'm not going to be quoted saying that. Nobody needs to die, but it's a matter of time.
Yeah. We gotta go. Before we go, several things. First of all, guys, we brought an actual model here. So if you want to actually see him and not only hear his voice, you should definitely go to our Facebook page, because we now post these podcasts as videos.
Plus, you can see our faces.
Yeah, well,
they're not too bad. They're not too bad.
Well, it's also very nice that you're considering me a model, but that also means, like, I was doing some modeling job, but don't think I'm like Bar Raffaelli in Hungary or something like that.
You're Gal Gadot in Hungary. So that's one thing.
You're on Facebook. You're on Instagram. You're
Yes, mostly Instagram.
yeah.
It's White City Boy.
Nice.
I started off this blog 7 years ago when I realized that there is so much creativity and like exciting culture going on in Tel Aviv, and since then it turned into sort of a traveling lifestyle blog. And apart from the Instagram, all my cooking can be found on Christoph's Kitchen on Facebook.
And what about if someone in the Jewish community in America, they want you do workshops,
Yes,
right? So if they want to
exactly.
invite you to do workshops
I'd
about
love to.
vegan cooking,
Yeah, I'm traveling a lot. Actually, with Nimi, he's my sous chef, and we do workshops, we do cooking classes, and we do pop-up dinners. We collaborate with restaurants, and it's usually like pre-registration dinner for about 30 people with 5 dishes, which we create especially for that occasion. Sometimes we do catering, and sometimes we just about a few months ago we had a cooking class in Westminster Synagogue in London, a Shabbat cooking
Wow.
class.
that's awesome.
So yeah, we are always very open to travel and cook, and I really believe in it that if anything can change this madness, including all the bureaucracy and all the wars and everything what we spoke about, it's eating together. I really believe in it, that food is bringing
And
the
sex,
people
yeah.
together in a way nothing else does.
I'm all for the food part. I'm all for the food part. I think there's nothing better than food bringing
Yeah.
us together.
Okay, so before we go, we have a collaboration with the Jewish Journal.
Yes, we do. JewishJournal.com, guys, check them out. They have great columns, great articles,
Podcasts,
We're part
Rosner's
of the
Domain.
network. Yeah, there's Rosner's Domain. There's
David Suisse Show.
exactly. So check out JewishJournal.com.
And we accept donations. Go to 2njb.com/donate. We had a little problem there, a technical issue, but now it's solved. So you can, but don't
Don't give us schmeckles. Give us shekels. Only shekels,
or
none of your
dollars or
schmeckles.
euros, because schmeckles offended some of the listeners. We used to say throw some schmeckles at us, and it turns out in Yiddish it means dicks.
Penis?
Really?
You should know this.
Well,
'Cause of the
it
Yiddish.
wasn't ever written in the Új Kelet, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So yeah, don't give us your schmeckles. We have nowhere to put
We
them.
apologize for using the word schmeckles. Please forgive us.
Do not apologize for using that word ever.
And that is it. Thank
Yes,
you so
it
much.
is.
It was
Thank you so much for having me. I
Thank
loved
you.
it.
So
I can't
awesome.
believe it. It was like, it felt like 5 minutes.
Good luck with
Thank you.
everything, man.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.